Ladies, there is a story we often tell ourselves, a story that whispers to us in moments of silence, I am alone. I don't belong. I am not enough. It's a story shaped by our fears and insecurities. It's the story of a woman with no friends. But what if I told you that this story, though real in its pain, does not define you? What if I told you that the path to true connection begins with embracing our imperfections, our vulnerabilities, and above all, ourselves? When we think about friendship, we often imagine laughter, shared memories, and the joy of being understood. But there is another layer to this. The absence of friendships can bring feelings of isolation, and these feelings can make us question our worth. It's easy to think that we have failed somehow or that we're undeserving of love or companionship, but the truth is, it is in our deepest struggles that we often learn who we truly are. It is in vulnerability that we find our courage.at. The heart of every human connection lies vulnerability, the courage to be seen, to be known, and to expose parts of ourselves that we may be most ashamed of or fearful to share. Yet, for many of us, vulnerability is often misunderstood. We've been conditioned to believe that being vulnerable is a sign of weakness, that it makes us susceptible to being hurt, rejected, or judged. This belief has led us to build walls around our hearts, to keep people at a distance, and to hide our true selves. But the truth is, vulnerability is the birthplace of all meaningful connection. It is not a flaw or a defect, rather, it is a profound strength. Let me be clear, being vulnerable doesn't mean exposing yourself to harm without protection, nor does it mean sharing every detail of your life with anyone who asks. Vulnerability means allowing yourself to be seen for who you truly are, flaws, fears, and imperfections included. It's the willingness to let go of the mask you wear and stand in the truth of your humanity. When we show up as our authentic selves, we create the possibility for deep, meaningful relationships. Vulnerability is the bridge that allows us to connect on a level that goes beyond surface conversations and superficial interactions. It's through vulnerability that we can say, this is me as I am right now, and I trust you to see me in my rawness and still value me. That is not weakness, that is an act of immense courage. So often we hide behind armor, the armor of perfection, success, or even busyness. We think if we look perfect on the outside, we'll be accepted, or if we keep ourselves so busy that we don't have time to reflect, no one will see our insecurities. But this fear-driven approach to life only leads to isolation. It keeps us from showing up as our true selves, and it prevents others from connecting with us in a real and meaningful way. The very walls we build to protect ourselves from vulnerability are the same walls that prevent others from reaching us. It takes courage to lower those defenses, to say, I'm struggling. I don't have it all figured out. I am human and I am worthy of connection despite my imperfections. The truth is, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we invite others to do the same. We create a space for people to show up as their authentic selves without fear of judgment. And in this space, connection flourishes. One of the most powerful realizations I've had is that our vulnerabilities, whether they are moments of fear, grief, or uncertainty, are not the things that make us weak. In fact, they are the things that connect us most deeply to others. It's through shared vulnerability that we find compassion, empathy, and understanding. When we stop hiding behind perfection and allow ourselves to be truly seen, we begin to invite the kind of relationships that are rooted in truth, love, and respect. Consider the women in your life who you admire most, the ones who seem to have it all together, the ones who always seem to know just what to say, the ones who inspire you. What often draws us to these women is not their perfection, but their willingness to show up as they are. It's the stories of struggle and triumph they share, the moments of honesty that make us feel like we're not alone. These women don't hide their weaknesses, they embrace them. They embody the courage to be themselves, and that is what makes them magnetic. In many ways, our culture has taught us to see vulnerability as a liability, something to be avoided at all costs. But I urge you to challenge that narrative. Vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, connection, and change. It's the foundation upon which strong relationships are built. When we show up as we truly are without fear of rejection or judgment, we allow others to do the same. And in doing so, we create a network of support, compassion, and understanding that cannot be built through perfection or avoidance. Imagine a world where we all embraced our vulnerability, a world where we no longer had to hide our scars, our doubts, or our fears, but instead could share them with others who would meet us with empathy and love. In such a world, we would be free to connect on a deeper level, free to be ourselves without fear of not being enough. And it is in this kind of world that true friendship, support, and connection thrive. So remember, this vulnerability is not a weakness. It is the greatest strength you have. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to show up as you are, flaws and all, and trust that you are worthy of love and connection just as you are. When you step into your vulnerability, you step into your true power, the power to connect, to be seen, and to live an authentic, meaningful life. When we talk about healing, we often think about physical wounds, bruises, cuts, or scars that need care and attention to mend. But what happens when the wounds are not visible to the eye? What happens when the pain is not from an injury to our body, but an injury to our spirit, to our sense of self-worth? These wounds often go unnoticed, both by others and sometimes even by ourselves, and yet they shape much of how we interact with the world. This is where self-compassion becomes essential. Self-compassion is not just a feel-good concept. It is a transformative practice that can radically change the way we view ourselves and ultimately the way we heal from emotional, mental, and even relational wounds. But too often we treat ourselves with harshness instead of kindness. We hold ourselves to impossible standards, driven by the belief that we are only worthy of love and care if we are perfect. This belief is toxic. It teaches us that we must earn our own love through accomplishments or by meeting some impossible set of expectations. It distances us from the very thing we need most, the ability to be gentle with ourselves in our moments of struggle, fear, and imperfection. We live in a world that often demands perfection from us, whether it's the pressure to perform at work, to look a certain way, or to meet societal expectations of success. It's easy to believe that we must always be at our best. And when we inevitably fall short, we tend to beat ourselves up, judging ourselves for every mistake, failure, or perceived flaw. This inner critic becomes our harshest enemy, telling us that we are not enough. But what if I told you that the key to true healing lies in silencing that critic and replacing it with kindness? Self-compassion is the act of treating ourselves with the same care, concern, and understanding that we would offer a dear friend who is struggling. It's the realization that we do not need to be perfect to be worthy of love, kindness, or compassion. We don't need to hide our flaws, our mistakes, or our pain. In fact, it is precisely through embracing these imperfections that we begin to heal. When we extend compassion to ourselves, we acknowledge that we are doing the best we can with the tools we have at the moment. We validate our own emotions and experiences, allowing space for ourselves to feel without judgment. Imagine for a moment if you treated yourself as you would treat someone you love dearly. Would you speak to her with harshness when she made a mistake? Would you criticize her for feeling down or for being human? Of course not. You would offer her understanding, patience, and love. You would remind her that she is worthy despite her imperfections. This is what self-compassion offers us, the permission to be human without the need for perfection. It's important to understand that self-compassion is not the same as self-pity. Self-pity is a state of feeling sorry for ourselves, whereas self-compassion is an active choice to show kindness to ourselves, regardless of our circumstances. Self-compassion doesn't allow us to wallow in our pain or stay stuck in self-doubt. Instead, it empowers us to face our challenges with grace, knowing that we can learn, grow, and become stronger through our difficulties. It's a mindset shift from I am broken and flawed to I am human, and I am worthy of love, even in my brokenness. The beauty of self-compassion is that it provides us with a foundation for emotional healing. When we give ourselves the grace to feel our pain without judgment, we create the conditions for emotional release and recovery. Think of a wound. If you don't tend to it, if you ignore it, criticize it, or try to cover it up with a mask, it will fester, and the healing process will be longer and more painful. But when you approach the wound with care, when you clean it, treat it with gentleness, and allow it to heal naturally, the process is faster, and the outcome is much healthier. Our hearts and minds are no different. Self-compassion is the treatment that allows us to heal from the inside out. This practice of self-compassion is crucial for those of us who find ourselves disconnected, who feel isolated from others. When we have no friends, when we feel alone in the world, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing we are unworthy of connection, love, or belonging. But self-compassion reminds us that our worth is not contingent upon the approval or affection of others. We are worthy of love simply because we exist. We are worthy of our own kindness, even in the face of our most difficult emotions. By practicing self-compassion, we begin to change the narrative we tell ourselves. We stop seeing our pain as a flaw or a failure and begin to see it as part of the human experience. We no longer try to fix ourselves, but instead, we begin to embrace ourselves. Healing doesn't mean erasing our scars or pretending they never existed. Healing means acknowledging our pain and accepting it as a part of who we are. We grow through our struggles and we become more resilient and more whole by showing up for ourselves, even when we feel unworthy. Another important aspect of self-compassion is forgiveness. When we make mistakes, we often hold on to guilt, shame, or regret. These emotions can eat away at our spirit and prevent us from moving forward. But self-compassion asks us to release these feelings. It teaches us that we can learn from our mistakes without being defined by them. We are not the sum of our failures, but rather the sum of our efforts to learn and grow. Through forgiveness of ourselves and others, we free ourselves from the grip of past pain and open the door to new possibilities. As you embark on your healing journey, remember that self-compassion is the foundation upon which everything else rests. It is the key to breaking free from the cycle of self-doubt and self-criticism. It is the key to opening your heart to love both from others and from yourself. It is the key to releasing the shame and fear that have held you back for far too long. When you embrace self-compassion, you give yourself the permission to heal, to grow, and to truly love yourself just as you are. So today, I invite you to treat yourself with the same kindness and compassion you would offer a friend in need. Be gentle with your heart. Embrace your flaws and imperfections, for they are what make you human. Remember, healing is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And the path to wholeness begins with self-compassion.